Ever since the Creta got a facelift earlier this year, we knew this was coming. This is the facelifted Hyundai Alcazar. And like the Creta, it gets updated styling, updated interiors, more features on the inside and more comfort. Welcome to Evo India and welcome to our review of the facelifted Hyundai Alcazar. Before we go ahead, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Evo India channel and leave a comment down below. Do you like the way the new Alcazar looks? Let's start by talking about styling, and the Alcazar actually gets a face like that of the N-line Creta with the badge lower down and with this horizontal focused grille. You get black chrome elements in the grille and you get this chunky silver bumper cum skid plate, and it looks pretty cool. Over on the side, this is where things are really different compared to the Creta. Firstly, you get 18-inch wheels. The top wheel size on the Creta is 17s, unless you're looking at the N-line, which is then 18. The wheelbase is longer, so your wheelbase is 150 mm longer than on the Creta. And the whole idea behind that is to make more room at the back as well as for the third row. These roof rails, they are now functional on the Alcazar. They were not before, and over at the back you get an updated rear design as well. You get vertically stacked tail lamps, you get a light bar, you get a silver element on the top over here which adds a bit of sophistication, and like the front you get a silver bumper cum skid plate which is slightly chunky and gives it a little bit of a rugged look at the bottom. Being the turbo petrol, you get twin tailpipes over there, very visible, but other variants of the Alcazar won't get that on the outside. On the inside, the interior layout is very similar. The Alcazar is based on the Creta, so the interior layout is pretty similar. You get the twin 10.25-inch screens, you get dual zone climate control, which is new, the same steering wheel, different color schemes and all of that. The major different color scheme is the fact that this gets brown trim on the inside, and even the upholstery reflects that, it's brown. Apart from that, you get minor trim differences around here, but in terms of features, it is very well equipped, just like on the Creta. You get your wireless phone charger, you get wired CarPlay and Android Auto. That's across all Hyundais at the moment. You get a panoramic sunroof, but interestingly, you don't get it on the diesel variants. You only get it on the turbo variants. You get your drive modes and traction modes. You get cooled seats. The Alcazar also gets electrically adjustable driver and passenger seat. Plus, it also gets a memory function for the driver's seat, which is pretty cool. The second row is really where the action is at in the Hyundai Alcazar. Obviously, the big talking point are these captain seats. Earlier one also got captain seats. These captain seats are also ventilated and the button is right here on the armrest. But this one is very comfortable. You get nice wide seats, you sink into them nicely, and the seats have been upgraded from the last one as well. So you do get armrests, but you also get adjustable thigh support. This is very BMW-like, very cool feature. You also get winged headrests over here, so in case you doze off, you have some support for your neck. Apart from that, features in the back is fairly well loaded. You get this tray table over here with an integrated cup holder. Pretty cool. You can also set your phone up over here if you want to watch something on the move. And then when your phone runs out of charge watching stuff, you have a wireless phone charger over here. To increase space at the back, you've got buttons on the front seat, so you can move the front seat out of the way from the back seat itself. You don't have to get out for that. And you've got a sun blind over here. Space itself is alright. I would have liked a little more space, especially since this tray table eats into a little bit of the space that you have in the back seat. If you want to open the tray table, you have to spread your legs and open it because there's just not enough space for you to open it otherwise. But as a car in this segment, you do have a fairly comfortable back seat. The Alcazar also gets a third row, and if you want to put an adult in here, you're going to have to push the center row a little bit forward, which then again compromises more space in the second row. But this space is ideally better for shorter adults or children because knee room is at a premium for sure over here. You get cup holders, you get USB Type-C ports, and you get a separate blower speed for the AC, which does help in terms of comfort, but just space in the back is limited. So the versatility and the use cases of the seat again are limited. In terms of boot space, the Alcazar gets 180 liters with all three rows up, but then you can expand this by flipping the last row down and expanding it to 570 liters. Now, this is the 6-seater variant, which means you have captain seats in the middle and those don't flip down flat. But if you get the bench with the 7-seater, you can actually fold that as well and expand it even further. Hyundai hasn't given us a number of the complete total amount of room in here, but it will be a fair bit. Okay, so behind the wheel of the Alcazar, what does it feel like? To start with, the engine is pretty much the same as the Creta. You've got a 1.5 turbo-petrol in here. It makes 158 bhp and 253 Nm of torque. Again, outputs are identical to the Creta. In terms of transmissions, you can have it with a 7-speed DCT or a 6-speed manual. And you can also have it with a diesel engine, the same 1.5 CRDI that you get in the Creta. The difference from Alcazar to Creta is that the Creta comes with the 1.5 naturally aspirated engine and this doesn't. And it doesn't because this is a heavier car. This weighs about 100 kilos more than the Creta, and pulling that weight along with that 1.5 nat asp would be quite a task. It would be very sluggish, especially when you load it up with 7 plus their luggage. If you have a roof carrier on top, then that tiny engine is going to be a little bit out of breath. So Alcazar does not get the 1.5 nat asp engine, and that's also why its prices start a little bit higher than the Cretas. You know, the entry point in terms of pricing is a lot higher because it doesn't have that engine, which is a lot more affordable to make. Now performance, we're in the turbo petrol and this has the most sprightly performance of the lot. It really feels quick off the go, and I'm in it alone at the moment. There's not much luggage in it. It's just me and the boys' camera equipment. So there's not too much loading the car up right now. And like this, it feels plenty sprightly. The 0 to 100 claim time is under 10 seconds for both the manual and the DCT. So that should give you an idea of how quick this car is. And it's a big car, it's a heavy car. So those are good numbers. And on the move as well, it does feel pretty enthusiastic. You know, you've got a nice wide flat torque curve. You've got a gearbox that responds quickly. It downshifts quickly if you wanted to, so when you want to really step on the gas and get moving, it will do that. You've got paddle shifters, so you can take manual control and plan your overtakes very easily. I like that. The paddle shifters are always a nice touch. Plus you've got drive mode, so you can stick it into sport mode and just get it a little more enthusiastic. But obviously that will come at a compromise of fuel economy if you're being too enthusiastic with the turbo petrol engine. You have an eco mode, so you can dial it into eco as well. And when you do that, inputs are a little lazier. The upshifting is a little quicker, so it tries to keep itself in a lower gear to keep in the optimum range for fuel efficiency. And then you've got your normal mode, so if you want a balanced output in terms of performance and efficiency, you can just keep it in normal, and it's plenty quick in normal as well. Refinement's good too. This 1.5 turbo petrol, it's a very refined engine. The gearbox is very refined as well. It doesn't feel too gruff in the cabin in terms of vibration, so the engine vibrations do not filter too much into the cabin even when you're ringing it out. And what I particularly appreciate is that the DCT is very well judged for stop-go traffic. Now, ride and handling. Have there been any updates to the chassis? Yes, there have. I don't know if you remember, but when the Creta came around, this facelifted Creta, Hyundai made a lot of hue and cry about improving the structural rigidity of the platform, and that was done to improve crash safety, targeting a high crash safety rating. Now, neither the Creta nor the Alcazar haven't crash tested yet, so we don't know what the crash safety rating is going to be, but they have done work in terms of using a lot of high strength steel, using a lot of strengthening materials around the cabin, changing the way the load parts move to make it a better, safer car. What does that do? That increases weight. So the dampers and the springs have to be tweaked. The suspension has to be tuned to compensate for that extra weight that all of that brings. So there aren't significant changes to the ride and handling setup, but what I have noticed is that the Alcazar actually rides a little better than before. It's not as stiff and not as unforgiving as the last one. The older Alcazar was a little firm. It had the 18-inch wheels. This also has the 18-inch wheels, but it does ride a little more plusher. I suspect they've softened up the rear a little bit. The rear does feel a little soft, especially when you're cornering, when you're exiting bends. If you hit a bump mid-corner, you can feel that softness in it. And that softness does bode well in terms of ride quality. It is a little more plush, maybe a little floaty at times, but that plushness will help it, especially if you're somebody looking to buy this as a car for the second row, which I highly recommend. It is a car that prioritizes comfort in the second row. As for handling, the Creta is a good handler, particularly over the generations. With every update, it does get a little tighter, a little nicer to drive. And the Alcazar sort of inherits a lot of that, but I do feel like the longer wheelbase does compromise handling a little bit. It just doesn't feel as sharp on turn-ins and doesn't feel as willing, if you may, when you want to chuck it around bends. It's not bad by any measure, but then again, the Alcazar is not a car to go corner carving in. If you want to do that, get a Creta N-Line, or even better, get a i20 N-Line. It's much more nimble. But yeah, the Alcazar, it will handle well. It's not going to tie itself in knots the first time you throw it into a corner. It's stable, it's reasonably well sprung, it will deal with corners well. What matters really in this car is the comfort and the refinement, and on those two counts, it does deliver. So yeah, overall, Alcazar, very nice. I think it's a good improvement from before. The 1.5 turbo suits the car really nicely. It's so much better than that 2-liter naturally aspirated petrol from the Tucson that they initially launched it with. This engine just pulls it along much more enthusiastically, and you can make much quicker progress down the road. And the improvements around the cabin, particularly in terms of the features and the back seat, it makes a huge difference to the way the Alcazar feels from the inside. It still feels half a segment down on something like a Safari or an XUV because of the dimensions, because of the packaging, because of the power outputs and the engine setup. But that's all right, because I think it's trying to punch in a hole that sits a little bit underneath those cars as well. So fair play to Hyundai for attacking that segment. Prices for the Alcazar start at rupees 15 lakhs ex-showroom, and they go all the way up to rupees 21.4 lakhs ex-showroom, whether you're looking at the diesel or the petrol. The lower entry point will attract a whole lot of new buyers. People who are looking at top-end Carenses and other 7-seat smaller cars may look at the Alcazar now. And at the top end, it does definitely have improved comfort in the captain's seats with stuff like the headrests and with the thigh support. So yeah, in terms of backseat comfort, this is definitely a car that you should be looking at if you want to be chauffeur driven around the city. The rivals include the like of the Safari and the XUV, but those are slightly larger, they are slightly more expensive and slightly less frugal. So if you're somebody looking for the sweet spot, the Alcazar could just be it.